I'm really excited to be here today. We have a fabulous panel, and we're going to be, just making sure we're in the same place, in the right place, we're going to be discussing merch and how this touches everybody's business, and hopefully we'll answer some questions that you guys have. So I'd like my panelists to all introduce themselves to the group, and we will begin. Yes, David, you can start.
My name's David Barnes. I'm the COO of Rhyme Stairs Entertainment. Underneath our umbrella, we do artist management for acts like Atmosphere, Aesop Rock. We manage the MF Doom estate, and then we have a record label that has 28 years of catalog, and then a music festival called Soundset and live touring business, and then we have now developed over the last about 12 years an extensive e-com and merchandising business.
Fred?
My name's Fred Feldman. I'm a co-owner, co-founder of a company called Many Hats. We do distribution, label services. We also have an in-house label called Wax Bodega. And yeah, that's what I do.
I'm Vanessa Ferrer. I'm the founder and CEO of MerchCat. We are an artist-friendly platform to sell and manage merchandise at live shows. So it's a point-of-sale system, inventory tracking, and analytics. And we also have a direct-to-fan platform with an app and a web store that we will be relaunching in the next few months.
Hi, I'm Andrew. I oversee the artists and labels team at Bandcamp. We're an online record store of sorts. Half of what's bought on Bandcamp is physical, led primarily, obviously, by vinyl. Our fans have bought $1.13 billion worth of music on Bandcamp.
I mean, come on, guys, how exciting is this? I mean, such a diverse group. You know, I wanted to start with a question which seems, after coming off a couple of weeks of going to different conferences, that when we're talking about physical media and merch, one of the big things that we're looking at is that 40% of people buying, whether it's a vinyl or CD, and even more so with cassette, don't actually have a physical player. So what I'd like to open this up with, as we're, you know, with the merch conversation, to our panelists is, what are you seeing in your space? Is all physical media now simply just a merch item? We may as well just run down the panel, Dave. So why don't you start?
I think in some ways it's getting there. I think it's a product of just the ubiquity of streaming, paying $10 a month for basically every song recorded. I think that fans are now, needing to look at other avenues to be able to show their fandom. And I think the physical manifestation of that music, whether that's, vinyl, CDs, or merch, kind of fits that bucket. I think that it's definitely moving in that direction. Though a lot of, we have a lot of legacy sort of artists under our umbrella, and I think our specific demographic of fans still buy it for the utility of wanting that experience of listening to vinyl or, that physical product. So yes and no. It is
a yes and no, and I think that's what was, some of the takeaway. It was also kind of exciting with the conversation around the curiosity that maybe you can't play it, but you can own it, and then almost as a community come together and listen, which I think is kind of exciting for the industry. Fred?
Yeah, I think it's a yes and no answer also. I think it depends on the genre in some cases. A post-rock fan, we do a lot of eclectic releases. So a post-rock fan is going to care about the audio quality. They're going to listen to it. A pop-punk record, you just want to have that collection up on your wall. You want to be able to look at it. You want to read the credits. You want to post on Instagram. So you've got to, we take a lot of care in the packaging. You're selling a souvenir in a lot of cases. So that's it.
And Vanessa, you must be seeing this with what, you're seeing with people's purchasing.
Yeah, in the live space, definitely we're seeing a lot of vinyl being purchased these days, and still CDs, but I think I agree with Fred and also with David, like it's a yes and no answer. I think that people want to have, they definitely want to take away from the show something, and the music, even if they don't have a record player or a CD player anymore, if there's nothing else for them to buy, or it's not within their price point, they might buy that just to have a memento from the show. But also agreeing with Fred on the genre type thing, you see a lot of rock bands selling vinyl, and because they have an audience for it, and then You see other, you know, kind of like pop bands, not so much, because that audience is not, the fan base doesn't demand vinyl records.
So it's still pretty much
And they're
genre
more of a
specific.
streaming type
Yeah.
fan base.
I mean, and you're seeing every single genre on, at Bandcamp, so I'm interested to see what your thoughts are on this.
I mean, it's hard to disagree with everything that's
Go on, do it.
said, but you're all liars. No, I mean, yes, I agree totally. Some of it is based on genre. There's obviously a lot of music that lends itself to a specific way of listening, and cassettes, very popular with the ambient crowd, and a certain kind of electronic music crowd loves to have that music on cassette. And I'm betting that many of those people, the delta between bought the cassette and own a cassette player is probably much wider than
Yes.
bought the vinyl even, I would imagine. But cassettes are cool looking. You could put them on the shelf, you could look at them, you showed your support.
Build a collection,
Yeah.
small, portable.
And obviously, most places, it's not just Bandcamp, but most places where you're buying this item, you're also getting the digital. So, you are listening to it, but whether you listen to the physical item or not, I don't know. I often will buy a record, and then as you all know, that record might show up, if you bought it online, that record might show up 3 months later or something. If you pre-ordered it, I've sometimes forgotten I bought that piece of vinyl, and then
Right,
there it
you're
is.
not
and
getting the immediate
oh,
gratification.
yeah. So you get, I'll listen to things both ways personally, and we could talk about.
I mean,
something else.
and again, it is a huge yes or no kind of question, but it does fall within the realm of merch. I think that's what you're seeing, one of the trends. It becomes part of your merch offering when you're putting it together, whether it's an artist or a label. So going to another question, when we're dealing with merch, certainly for the labels that are directly dealing with artists, these are the conversations that you're having very early on in the relationship as to if you can speak to, around the merch, whether you're going to be involved in the merch, how much you're going to be involved, and how that works with the artist negotiation in the relationship. So, I mean, Fred and Dave, if you want to jump in here.
Okay, I'll go first. I think, it's baked into every deal that we do, especially within our model. We're trying to recoup a lot of the outlay of our cash for campaigns by street date, and merch can often cover a lot of that outlay with, probably like 20 to 30% in some cases, some recent cases. So it ends up being a huge financial component of our strategy, and we do try to bake that in. I think the legality of it, I think it's a really important piece to get into a contract, from that you were mentioning negotiation, and especially now we're looking back at, especially looking as the managers of the MF Doom estate, we're seeing countless examples of bad actors essentially making profit off of the likeness of this deceased artist, and they've, former artists that had worked with the artist that are doing their own prints, doing all sorts of stuff, making that profit. And if you don't have something cut and dry in a lot of ways.
So you're putting your arms around it from the start.
Yes, yeah.
I'm interested, Fred, you've been, and I say this obviously with love in my heart, you've been in the industry a long time. What are you seeing in the trends? Are you seeing this now being more upfront when you're looking at negotiations to 10 years ago?
Yeah, we're just trying to be fair with the rights we're asking for, because like David said, we're putting money out, and the quickest way to recoup is in your pre-order and your D2C store. We're not as interested in the retail side of things for merch. It's just it's a volume business, and we're in the developing artist game, so you're really not going to see that till down the line. So in all our deals, we're trying to get anywhere from 2 to 4 designs, and then we want to be really smart with how we present it. We want it to tie in to be a marketing piece to the record, so when someone's wearing that shirt or hoodie, they're advertising your artist. And then we want to also tie it into the bundling with the records, with the pre-orders. Our merch is exclusively tied to pre-orders, so that's how we view it.
And I think that's the thing. You're looking at all the different avenues for sales, whether it's the D2C avenue, it's the tour, avenue, and I think that's the combination and everybody finding their niche. So to Vanessa, a lot of the stuff that you're dealing with is, bands, artists on the road. What, from your purview of this, do you think is the best strategy if, you have the artist or label in front of you that's going out on tour? What is your advice and strategy to deal with their merch?
Plan. Plan ahead. A lot of times we see artists. I have dealt a little bit on the physical side of merch too, with helping artists procure merch, and a lot of times they are not giving enough lead time, and have the leeway to get the items that they want in time. So I would say definitely planning, have all of your artwork ready, and have the merch plan and a merch strategy outlaid, kind of figure out who your fans are, and what types of items you're going to be bringing on tour with you. And if you have some data from past shows, look at that data, look at your past sales in order to plan, and then also have a way of keeping track of what you're doing, so you can take that data, what shows you're selling the most merch at, what sizes, styles, and so you can take that data back after you get off the road and plan for the next time.
Just following up a question to you, what I think is interesting when you're looking at the different size of artists and what they're selling at shows, when you're dealing with more of the independent artists, are you still seeing it being primarily soft goods, your tees, your beanies, your that kind of thing? Yes. Or are you seeing more creativity in that space, or is it still kind of sticking to?
So, I think you need the fundamentals. We're definitely seeing apparel is still around 60% of sales, then music, and then other stuff, which could be, pins, shot glasses. We have seen artists who have very specialty goods akin to their other talents. They make hand-drawn pictures that they sell, or just photographs of themselves. So different types of things, jewelry that they have made. So, fans really love that stuff. But I think you need to understand what your fans command and what they want, what they're going to buy, because you don't want to spend money and time making something and they're not interested in it. So it's really important to understand your fan data and your metrics. And if you don't know, if you're first going out on tour for the first time, you can look at your streaming analytics to see the age and the gender. So many times we see people who are not producing a female t-shirt. And I know for myself that I'm tired of having boxy t-shirts that I don't want to wear
Don't forget the
anywhere.
ladies, I think is the message we're saying here.
Yeah, and so speaking, to one of you, with the, I forgot what it was. Oh my God. Totally just spaced.
I think the main thing here,
Yeah,
which I think is
know your
important to
fans.
everything, is
Yeah.
know your fans and plan. Write two things down, I think those are huge takeaways.
Can I say one thing? I think it's also, I think it's important to be as creative as possible.
Yeah.
And no idea is insane. We have a band now who is selling deodorant on the road because he says his crowd stinks. And it's shocking. I went to the show last week and I was like, are you selling a lot? He's selling crazy amounts of deodorant.
So
and
they
he
also sell shirts
speed
though.
stick.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying he's got, this band, Heart Attack Man, has a unique perspective. He puts knives up and they sell, and then they had to stop him from selling mace. It fits the aesthetic because his sort of persona is this loud lunatic, and but the deodorant was.
But I love that. I think that speaks to, Fred and I were on a panel recently, and one of the other people on the panel was talking about 8 tracks, that they're putting out 8 tracks. And you're thinking, well, who buys that? Well, a lot of people do, don't they, from what we're being told. And it's knowing your audience and being kind of cool and creative. So, Andrew, you're looking at a huge swath of physical media and obviously digital, but obviously focusing on the physical here. What are you seeing in the realm of merch? Are you seeing things that are coming through at Bandcamp?
For sure. Well, first of all, half of what's bought on the site is physical. So remember that.
Gotta love that.
You are right that it is a great way to recoup and to get people to buy music. And artists who sell physical goods on Bandcamp make 10 times more than those who don't. So clear what you need to do. I took a look at a couple of quick accounts before I got here. I looked at the Season of Mist label, and in their merch, top of their merch, I saw a wall flag, I saw a bunch of different t-shirts, I saw a hoodie, CD, cassette, bunch of different variants. I looked at an artist called Terra Builder. I saw a denim jacket, a hoodie, a zip-up sweater, a tank top, sweatpants, shorts, tote bag, coffee mug, vinyl, and CD, all right at the top of the page. And then I looked at a label from London that I like called Rhythm Section. They're selling wine, a ring, water bottles, sunglasses, a utility vest, vinyl, CD, cassettes, t-shirts, socks, love hearts, candy, and an iron-on patch. So basically you can get dressed and eat and drink yourself for a couple of orders on Bandcamp.
I think the really interesting thing is when you have a diverse offering of merch and you're looking to put it together, the minimum order quantity on some of these things is pretty low. So you can actually go out there and try some things out without it being like a really heavy lift. You know, we see that with people that we work with, that they may do just very small orders and see whether anybody wants it. I mean, who knew the deodorant would work? But once it did, you can normally get stuff like that pretty quickly to, you know, restock. I mean, following up on this, when we look at merch and how can you productize and utilize the fandom, which is what we're all trying to do when we're touching the consumer, what are some of the marketing strategies or things that you guys have put together to help that process when you're working, to get that creativity, to come up with something different? Should we bring it back to you, Dave?
Well, I think a lot of it goes back to what you were talking about, of just knowing your fan and knowing what is going to add value in terms of what they're wanting and how they want to engage with the artist. But I think the biggest thing on our D2C strategy is, I think it's the most powerful thing that, as you know, wearing an artist management or label hat, it's the best way to actually build a direct connection with fans. Because right now, all the DSPs own that fan relationship. You know, we can figure out all the demographics of who's listening to the music, but we have there are some levers, you know, whether that's Spotify fans first or, you know, other sort of levers to be able to pull on the platforms to be able to engage with those monthly listeners and the followers there. But in a lot of ways, they own the fan relationship. Instagram, Meta, Twitter, those platforms own the relationship with the fan there. You know, you're now getting throttled to the point where an organic post is getting shown to probably 10 to 15% of your earned following on these platforms. So you have to spend money through ads to be able to reach the people who want to engage with you. And then on the ticketing side, Live Nation, AEG, AXS, Ticketmaster, they own all of the customer data there. So for us, the biggest piece is, you know, of D2C is ultimately getting fan data and looking at it in an incremental sort of format.
So how can you get that? What's the solution? I mean, there are all these barriers from the DSPs and other people that are keeping you out. So what are
you have to build it over
the best
time.
practices?
I mean,
is
a lot,
it a time?
Yeah. It's a lot of intentionality, you know, ultimately building the right tech stack so you can do pixel tracking, picking the right D2C sort of format, working with the right partners to develop merchandise. A2Z has been a partner with us for 20 plus years, but it's a lot of ultimately just building the right sort of infrastructure to do that, and being really intentional with what you're producing that ultimately is adding value to the fans and in creating that connection so that they want to come to that site and purchase there. You get their email, you get their number, then from there you've got a potential lifetime connection with those fans to start incrementally doing more and more stuff over the years.
And managing that. And I think just throwing it just quickly across to Andrew, you know, you obviously have an enormous amount of data and do a fabulous job connecting communities and, you know, people to artists they want to be involved in. You know, that whole curation process, I'm assuming, has been developed and you're working on it. Are there any advice you can give to people that are trying to, you know, manage curation and engaging?
Yeah, I mean, I think we take care of a lot of the things that you pointed out are difficult on other platforms, as in we're not a blocker, we're not the gateway.
Yeah.
You want to message your fans, please message your fans. We highly encourage you to message your fans because of the fans who actually opened their wallet and bought your music before, there's no, only 10% of the fans are going to be reached. If you message your fans using Bandcamp, they'll get an email, they'll get a notification in the app. Build those relationships. Don't just think about, okay, well, I got to tweet this out, and if I do a post on Instagram, your fans are right there. You've got 10,000 fans on Bandcamp. You can just go ahead and email them right away. They want to hear from you. It's not spam to them. And gold standard of messaging via the app on Bandcamp is to do something like have your band wearing their T-shirt or holding their, limited edition gold vinyl hanging out of the sleeve and say, hey, album's out next week, come buy it, or come see us on the road, or whatever. And in that message, you include a link to buy the album or the T-shirt, and boom, it goes right to those folks. There was an example, the band Beach House on Sub Pop had an album out for pre-order for about 6 or 7 weeks already, and they messaged their fans on Bandcamp with a little picture of the gold vinyl sticking out the sleeve, and it said, hey, thanks everyone for the support, can't wait to see you on tour in the next few weeks, but we have a few copies left of the limited edition gold vinyl, a few to Beach House, maybe a bit more than to most bands, but they did $17,000 worth of business off that one message alone. Their fans are right there, so reach. Sometimes doing the simplest thing instead of a grand, if we do this plan over here, this platform and this one here, do all that, great. But don't forget that if you're using Bandcamp, your fans are right there too.
Fred,
Well,
Vanessa?
and, further to that, I think it is important to talk to you could use merch as a fan engagement tool itself, and, reach out to your fans, whether it is through Bandcamp or email or social media, and say, hey, we're going on tour in X amount of time. Like, what do you want to see? What kind of items would you like to see on our tour? What should we make next? And find a way to use that as that engagement tool, because then the data comes back to you directly from your fans. And I would say that, if they are true to their word, they're going to buy those items. I mean, you're getting it directly from your consumer. So, talk
That's
to your
great.
fans.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah.
Fred, pearls of wisdom?
I mean, we've been maintaining, email lists for years, and they continue to grow. We just put everyone's name in the email list from, every 6 months, we take every order and make sure that their email address is in there. We pull the email addresses from Bandcamp. We just try to speak directly to the consumer as much as possible. We also try to, like I said, we do a lot of developing artists. So if they have friends in other bands, when it drops, we try to get those artists to drop, to tweet out or post the smart URL. And you'd be surprised. And you'd be surprised at how many people don't want to ask another artist to do it. And when they're asked, they usually do it if they're friends with that particular artist. So I think it's really important to just think about, like you said, people overlook the simplest things.
Yeah.
Everybody wants bells and whistles, and everyone's looking for that next app that's going to speak to an audience, and keep it simple.
Yep, keep it simple. And following on a little bit about keeping it simple is, to the panel, what are the real lessons you've learned around the merch? I mean, one of the things in producing merch, whether it's D2C or on tour or whatever it is, one of the things that I think is a huge aha over the years that we've seen is when you're putting together, regardless of whether it's a D2C or an item, really think about the shipping. So many mistakes happen in the shipping. The cost of the shipping, protecting what you're shipping, and making sure that you have all the sizes thought out before you go to sale with it. So you're not saying, oh yes, we'll include this everywhere domestically, and then it weighs 5 times what you thought it did. Get in front of all of that. Make sure you have great packaging that protects your product, because you don't want to be dealing with it down the line. So for me, my lessons learned is think about the shipping with what you're doing right at the beginning, how you're packaging it to protect it, and for the cost side of it. So over to you guys.
You mentioned, sizing.
Yeah.
On Bandcamp, and I'm sure everywhere else too, people love bundles. Bundles are what go first. So the fans that come to most artist sites on Bandcamp, they want to buy the most expensive configuration of, I got the, double purple splattered vinyl and the die cut sleeve with the cassette, with the tote bag and the tour t-shirt, and that's like $85 or whatever it is. Those are the things that go first. But just be careful if you're bundling that stuff together, if there's something in there that requires sizing.
Yeah.
And it just gets really messy really easy. You've seen a lot of artists lose control of what could have been a really great campaign because they then have to oh my God, we only have this many smalls and so many larges orders, or I only have, it's really, really difficult when what's in your bundle can also includes a variant.
I mean, that's the other thing, talking about sizing, is thinking about that, giving people incentives. If you've got a box and you've got a bit of room in it, incentivize people to buy some of the smaller items that you can pop in, because it's not going to actually increase your shipping, and you're increasing your dollar per user. So
Yeah.
Lessons learned. I'll go next. I think. Are you? Yeah. Okay, great. I would say it's like finding the right partners, both in design, manufacturing, fulfillment, the right platforms to be using to be able to reach fans, and something that's scalable. I think the focusing. I think you spoke to it a little bit in the packaging and the shipping. It's focusing on the customer experience, and this is the company I was at before, Rhymesayers, Vinyl Me Please, a record subscription company. We were just obsessed with what is the experience, from the first touch point where they're looking at the product image, or they're finding out about what Vinyl Me Please is, to the moment that they actually receive the package, and the moment they open it, they see the cocktail recipe, the art print. It's like become obsessed with what is the fan experience who's putting their money into wanting to actually engage with your artist or your label. And so I think that has been the biggest learning. But then I think you mentioned earlier, pre-orders are really important, especially when you're first getting started and trying to figure out what type of products your fan base wants to buy. Over ordering it can just be a killer, because it's just cash on the shelf, and that can kill an entire campaign. And with pre-ordering, you, at least to the sizing point, exactly what the size breakdown is going to be, and then over the course of 3, 4, 5 years of doing different launches, you can then really start knowing, okay, this is this percentage breakdown from women's sizes to smalls all the way up to triple XL, and being able to just know that off the jump. So those are some of the learnings. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think it's communication is really important with your D2C partners, who's ever doing your fulfillment. We will ask on anything that's a box set, oddly shaped. We try to get that weight in advance, make sure they have the proper shipping materials. And then sometimes you think of some piece, this merch piece that is great, but then can it fit in a box with the vinyl? Will it damage the vinyl? Because you don't want to send two pieces. We've done some beautiful art prints, not thinking that, those have to be rolled up in a tube, and that's got to ship separately. But you didn't account for that, and then you're going to ding the customer. So you have to think about that, because it's not just the price point you're setting, then it's shipping and handling, which gets passed on to the customer. So I think the customer experience is a really important thing. And you want to put yourself in their shoes and say, I'm selling this record for $25, but really after shipping, it becomes a $32, $35. And that's when people start going, maybe I don't need this. So any item you're making, think about the shipping.
Well, and I think, maybe this isn't a lesson, but I think any item that you're making, you have to think about the actual cost of the item, be realistic about the items that you're making and how much they're going to cost. I've had artists come to us, and I'm sure you have too, where they want to make this ridiculous design with 9 colors and 3 locations, and those drive up the cost of a merch item tremendously. And then you're stuck with an item that you're like, oh geez, well now I just paid $15, $20 to make this shirt, and now how am I going to sell this and make a profit on it? So I think being realistic about your kind of your cost that you're looking at, and then also your merch mix of there are ways to leverage higher costing items with lower costing items to come up with this way that you can still have the right profit margin in your merch mix. And so to really just be pointed about like what you're making, how much it's going to cost, and realistic about the cost, and then maybe temper some things like that can lower the cost, like maybe removing a location that's not really going to be a value add from a marketing perspective, like something on the back of a shirt, like people aren't always like, you know, in the back, on the top of the neckline, things like that. Like, so just really having a merch strategy and being like pointed about what that strategy is going in and then sticking to it.
I mean, it comes back to keep it simple. I mean, it's, you know, good design is good design, frankly. It doesn't have to be, you know, a million bells and whistles. Good design is strong, and that will sell whatever it is, whether it's a T-shirt or something fabulous. The other thing just about on the road stuff that we see people doing is you can do very inexpensive items. I think it's catering to your crowd. You know, who's going to be there? Who are you catering to? Is this a new band that's got loads of young kids that are there? Do pins, patches, you know, those
Stickers.
are still, yeah, stickers, anything, you know. I think it's just broadening the scope outside of, you know, we just can do, you know, our softer tees and our this, that, and the other. The more people you get out there that are wearing your stuff, you know, sticking it on the back of their computers, doing whatever it is, speaking to what seems to be the key, which is let's get the data, let's connect with the fans, let's do that. You just want to engage. So I
But
think there are
also
lots
having
of,
different price points for
Yeah.
different people's budgets, because not everybody has, you know, $60 to spend on a hoodie or $30 to spend on a T-shirt. Maybe they just want to take something home from the show, and it is a sticker, and maybe you paid 25 cents for that sticker, but you could sell it for $3 or $4.
or you just, you know, even with labels, you know, talking about how labels or stores share their identity and build an identity of a brand, why people will then come back and check out other things, just simple things to, you know, build that. I'm sure Bandcamp has its own whole merch thing to build community. I think it's an important message.
Sure. Actually, I just wanted to add something about broadening and labels. I used to work at a label for Bandcamp, and one of the things that we did that kind of, you know, when you're running a label, there are always ebbs and flows in revenue, and in one of the times when there was not a lot of revenue coming in, you really need a Hail Mary once in a while. Anyway, we did a bunch of T-shirts, and the designs were coming in. They were really cool, and I mean, we'd done T-shirts before with like the names of the labels on them and stuff like that, and they'd always done okay. But what we didn't realize was, and maybe it's obvious sounding now explaining it, but just a cool T-shirt that doesn't actually have anything to do with your label, like it doesn't have to be so obvious as to have your label name on it, can actually be really helpful to your label. So Ubiquity was the label, and we did this series of T-shirts like music is the weapon of the future. It had no Ubiquity on it anywhere except in the label in the back. And then what's another one we did? We did one with really cool boom boxes on it, and we did one with a series of like machine guns, but right in the middle was like a guitar. It was all along the same lines of like, you know, music is cool and whatever, everything else is not. And so we started selling them by the bucket load, and then like festival season came around, and I go to like a festival, and I was like, oh my God, there is a reasonable percentage of people in the crowd wearing the T-shirt with the machine guns and the guitar on it, or like the music is the weapon of the future T-shirt is like everywhere. And then before we knew it, Urban Outfitters picked up the shirts, and we were selling like, there was literally like 1 year we sold like 100,000 T-shirts that, you know, there is no way we would have done anything like that before. And the lesson there just being like broadening what you could be doing in a way that like is good for your brand, but it's not as obvious as like label name, you know.
And nothing else sounds cool, does it? I mean,
Right.
that's what everybody's going to come up with, something. And to speak to that, I always think, you know, when people are coming and asking about merch, you know, they want ideas of the most diverse, sort of crazy thing that you've seen. So, you know, you guys are all around seeing this creativity. What is something that you've seen recently that you're like, oh man, I wish I'd thought about doing that for one of my artists or my label, or just you went and bought it because it was so cool? I mean, come on, guys.
I'm thinking through.
There was a brass pig on Bandcamp for sale for a while. It was $1,000. I don't know if anybody ever bought it.
I mean, that's
Not
kind of
that
cool.
cool. I mean, honestly, not to be contrarian, I'm sure you guys have got some cool ideas on what has sold, but I went and looked through what are the top selling things on Bandcamp, and it's actually, again, it's back to that idea of simple.
It's a sticker.
So, vinyl, in this order, vinyl, CD, cassette, t-shirt, other, which is really just vinyl, but whatever, book, magazine, button, sweater, hoodie, ticket, poster, other apparel, hat, sheet music, Bandcamp Live ticket, tote bag, flash drive, DVD.
I mean, so it's kind of simple. I mean, talking about something that I thought was really cool, as none of you have other good suggestions, I'm going to talk about this. We just did a record, a soundtrack record, and it was for the movie Glass Onion. It's out, isn't it? I can talk about this, but what I thought was super cool about it was really, it had, plastic and this and die cuts, but that was cool. But what I thought was super cool is that on the inside, we printed just napkins. If you've seen the film, there's the whole thing where they write the thing about the napkin. Cheap as chips, put it in an envelope and stuck it into the vinyl. And I was like, it goes back to the whole thing. It wasn't an expensive thing to do, but just clever and engaging. And I think that's when you're looking at, there are the ways we've spoken about how you sell the merch, but it's like making your merch engaging. So it's broader than just putting out what you think you should. And I think that's the key. Yeah. So we have a couple of minutes left, and I think we've got some great people here. So I want to open it up. So raise your hand, and this lovely gentleman will come and give you a mic so you can ask a question to whoever you'd like. Don't be shy.
In the meantime, can you tell you one quick thing before we get to the question? That the band Wolfpack, I like this, they made a variant of their album available for pre-order where if you paid X amount more, they would put your name in the credits. Oh my God, that sold so many copies. And it was not cheap either, but basically paid for production of the record and a whole lot more. So there's a fun little idea.
Just curious how you keep it fresh. So if you work with a lot of various artists and you're in the space where you're actually helping on that design side or this product side, how do you just keep it fresh, keep those ideas rolling, without sort of overdoing it or complicating the options to purchase?
I think for us, it's kind of finding a line between accessibility and scarcity, because you want to build some scarcity and some urgency for folks to want to pick up a specific product. But we look at a lot of streetwear brands in terms of what they're doing, whether that's Supreme. We look at Tyler, the creator of golf, and what they're doing and what he's doing in that space in terms of how are they pushing the envelope in different spaces. So it's looking at a lot in the fashion world in terms of what sort of products do we want to produce for our artists and kind of repurposing some of those areas. And then just being really intentional, we really knowing what's going to work and not going to work. And I think ultimately the artist a lot of the time has the best pulse on that, because the reason why a fan is going to buy a merch item from an artist is because they love the artist. And so ultimately if the artist is getting behind it, then it's going to have way more success than anything else.
It's telling a story. I think
Yeah.
to speak what you're asking, you need to tell the story and be authentic, because people can tell when you're not being authentic and you're trying to just, schlock something out. So it's listening. I'm sure when you actually listen and look around, like you're saying, does anybody else want to?
Yeah, we try to be really collaborative with the artists, bringing in, we're never there to tell them, this is what we're going to do. We want it to be a conversation. And a lot of times artists have different designers they work with that they like, that understand their aesthetic. We bring them in, or we try to give them people to look at that they're unaware of. And one thing we're trying to do with Wax Bodega is we are trying to make this unique brand where every vinyl release we have has an OB strip on top that gives the variant information, and we are seeing people really appreciate that. And, because it's a bodega themed label, I guess. We do quarterly like menus that go out to people. We drop them in orders. And so these little things that we're doing are actually getting more curiosity from people. And we see people, because the label's only like a year and a half old, but it has a lot of momentum going into it. I think because there was a lot of attention to this aesthetic of what we wanted to present out there. We see artists at a certain level sort of coming to us, seeing that, we're interested in releasing the record. And, I'm pretty proud of that.
Thank you. There's a gentleman at the back there as well that raised his hand after. Oh, you and then you. I mean, this chap. Oh, no, I think. Well, this gentleman that's got the mic just behind you, and then you can go, and then there's a guy at the back.
I have a fulfillment company. I'm glad y'all talked about fulfillment because that's a big piece. And but we make merch and stuff too. And so the thing, it's more of a comment that we've seen work really well is when you put up a design and you're like, for the next week, this will be available. And if we get X number, of fans that buy it, let's say 50 of you that buy it, then we're going to make it. You don't have to put that number on there, but it sometimes, to the scarcity point, it can make it seem like, look.
You're focusing people to intentionally, which I think
Yes, and your financing then is in the pocket, kind of like you were talking about, Andrew, with regard to putting their name in the liner notes. Your money's there, then you go make it, then you fulfill it.
Thank you. To the lady here, and then I know we're on a time thing.
So I'm just curious about all of your personal opinions on how many merch items is too many, because on a web store or at the merch table at a live show, I've seen anywhere from like 3 to 20 items, and we know that there are always going to be like those 3 top sellers, and that's like, the artists who are doing 3, that's why they're doing 3, they're doing what works. 20, they're getting maybe a little too creative, but with all of your long years of experience, I'd like to hear from you.
20 sounds like a lot. I mean, I like Sarah's advice of what can you mail out. So, think about all of that stuff first and see what fits in a box. And can you do stickers and T-shirts and CDs? I don't know. I think keeping it practical and simple and reasonable. I don't know.
Vanessa, you must see this.
I worked with an artist who had like 30 items, and it was just absolutely insane. And most of them were not selling. And now I just kind of took a peek back at her web store, and she's down to about 5. And I think that is probably like where it belongs. Like 1 or 2 T-shirts, maybe a hoodie, your music, and then maybe something else.
I'm going to disagree with all of you. I think as many as possible should be in your store. To the gentleman at the back, I'm not sure if you've got a mic, but maybe you can speak very loudly to us.
You know what? I'll just catch Andrew after.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And again, we're going to be wrapping it up in a minute, but we will be here or outside if anybody has any direct questions. So I would like to thank my fabulous panel for their time this afternoon. I hope you guys enjoyed it and found some useful things.